IVM.
Hey Raghavi, do you remember when Coldplay came up with this song called Princess of China with Rihanna?
Yeah, I remember it, the event, but I suppressed the song itself as a memory. Yes.
Yes, I agree. The song was terrible, but
Disgusting.
worse was the fact of, they just culturally appropriated China so much. Like,
Yeah.
he's wearing, I don't know what his name is, Coldplay frontman is
Will
wearing
Paltrow's husband.
that one.
Yes.
Is wearing this ninja outfit, and
Oh,
Rihanna has her hair done in a weird way. It's just
Nice.
peak cultural appropriation. It's like that other song that they did.
You're talking about Him for a Weekend.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Actually, that's not so much cultural appropriation as it's just like poverty porn. I feel. It's terrible to say, but you know what it is.
But you'd think that they'd learn by now.
No, they would. But also, why do you bring this up today? Because if you remember, we too may have incorporated certain accents in our Jean de Valois episode. Do you remember that, Nisha? You did it with so much energy and happiness at that time.
Yeah. But you know what? I feel like if it's a colonizer, it's okay. Once in a while.
Oh, you steal our jewels and we steal your accent.
Oh, well done. Have you ever wondered why women don't do more crime?
Well, we're here to tell you there's misconduct all the time.
Women are thieves and murderers.
That's gross misconduct.
Con artists, money launderers.
Criminal misconduct.
Financial fraud that's hard to track.
Takes some planning, but still misconduct.
Even breaching a contract.
That's more civil though.
It's misconduct. It's misconduct. We tell you all about women that suck. Things that make you say, what the? It's misconduct.
Hello, and welcome to Misconduct. We are a podcast that talks about Indian women that have committed crimes. But once a season, we do a non-Indian women as well. Because all across the world, all over the planet, women everywhere are capable of bad things if they want to do it. I'm Raghavi.
And I am Nisha. And today we are talking about Empress Wu Zetian, who is known as China's only recorded female emperor.
I realize you used the word emperor.
Yes. So, emperor. So, this is something that we found out. And if someone speaks Mandarin and they can correct us, please correct us. So, apparently the term emperor is gender neutral in like the original Chinese. So, we could say emperor because empress is like the consort of the emperor.
Right.
Not the queen, because the queen is empress regent. Yeah.
Oh.
So we are not going to say empress regent. I feel like it's too much work. And I feel like emperor should be gender neutral enough. So let's just say emperor.
Or Wu, because she's our best friend.
She is.
Yeah.
So Wu was a highly educated consort of Emperor Taizong. And she went on to become the wife of the next emperor, Gaozong, both of the Tang dynasty. Her path towards becoming a consort, or a word which we will not use, which is concubine, as any woman in the harem was described as. Her path was kind of smooth and it was obvious. It was almost like she was raised for this and she was hand-selected by Emperor Taizong at the time. But her path towards higher power was cursed with bloodshed, poisonings, corruption, kidnappings, casual executions, false accusations of witchcraft, putting in place puppet kings, and of course, drowning people in wine.
What?
Yeah, you heard me right. She drowned people in wine.
That's a rich empress. But also, was she a bad one?
No, she was apparently a really good ruler.
Oh.
However, at the time, the role of women in positions of authority was not really looked at very well, especially by the Confucian scholars of the time.
Confusion.
Yes. Are you confused?
Yeah.
Lel. Okay, so Confucians are people who believe in the teachings of the Chinese philosopher Confucius.
Oh, sweet.
Yes. Their writings on her reign are largely mean, even vicious.
Aww.
Yeah, they call her ruthless a bunch. Commentary about her reign as a terror queen is available all through the text published on Chinese imperial history right after the Tang dynasty. So these texts sort of vilify her actions towards gaining political power, and they treat her as a ruthless queen. However, later accounts, especially those found by archaeologists post the 1950s,
Mhm.
detail that while her initial years were tainted by bloodshed, assassinations, she actually settled down and when she was sure of her like political stability. So Emperor Wu officially rose to the throne in October 665 AD.
What? That was 1350 years ago.
What? What solid maths was that?
Yes, I did not calculate that beforehand.
So today she is credited with unifying China under Buddhism,
Mhm.
for making huge reforms to the civil services exam that allowed common people to apply for government positions instead of just the aristocracy,
Mhm.
for building large granaries and establishing agriculture policies that actually pulled China out of a long drought, conducting census among the common population to understand how best to divide public resources like land and things like that. She also fortified the hell out of China's borders and she made amazing trade friends with India and Iran.
Yay. Wait, then why did the Confucian scholars not like her?
I don't know, sexism?
Ah, yes. Correct. So Wu's crimes, so to speak, however, are not a product of sexism. I would actually go so far as to say that it was feminism. Yay! So what are these crimes? Some accounts say that she may have killed her daughter when said daughter was an infant. And it was primarily so she could pin the blame for the murder of the infant on the first wife of Emperor Gaozong. By the way, she was actually Emperor Taizong's consort at first.
Right.
Taizong was Emperor Gaozong's father, which initially made her the future Emperor Gaozong's stepmother.
Oof.
Yeah, so in any case, she had a pretty torrid affair with her stepson. And then when his father died, she ended up with him for real.
Okay.
But since his first wife was in the way, she got rid of her by blaming her for the baby's death. And then the first empress was actually found guilty and was sentenced to death.
Guess sabe.
Indeed. Much, much later, Empress Wu wielded so much control over her husband, who now became emperor, that she used to whisper matters of the court to him, all the while pretending that, he was still the ruler. And when he died, she took all the steps that she could to depose her sons, the sons that she birthed, just so she could rise to the position of emperor herself. Finally, in 665 AD, she got it. Not officially. She was still kind of like, oh, let's put a fake, male ruler in there. But she effectively ruled for 40 years.
Nice.
And 15 of those years, she ruled under the name Wu Zhao, effectively taking down the Tang dynasty and calling it the Zhao dynasty.
Whoa.
And this is the only Chinese dynasty named after a woman. And it's the only break in the entire massive Tang dynasty.
Nice.
She ruled, of course, till her family usurped her throne. And, she also suffered prolonged illness at some point and eventually died on 16 December 705 AD.
So today, in many sections of China and globally, her life is actually celebrated. And we'll get into the details about why she's bad, why she's good, what do we think. But before we get into the episode, our usual warnings. This podcast is not suitable for children. Listener discretion is advised. Oh, am I doing context setting again?
No, you're doing the early life of Wu Zetain, but
Okay.
I want to save the context setting for myself. Let's do it.
All right. So Wu Zetian was born under the name Wu Zhao. Records show her date of birth as 17th February 625 AD, but there's no record of her birthplace. Some sources say that it is in the Shanxi district of China, and this is the accepted version now. So her father was Wu Shihu, and her mother was Lady Yang.
By the way, when you say Wu, we actually refer to the family name. So when we're calling her Wu, we're actually calling her by the family name.
Oh.
Also, I don't know how to describe it the best way. Actually, I know how to describe it the best way. Most of you must have watched the Disney movie Mulan.
I've seen it.
Yes, the animated one, not the... the more recent one also applies, but it's not
Yeah.
as cute. Her name in the movie is actually Fa Mulan, with Fa being the family name. That's just how it worked in Chinese, especially among the nobility. In Chinese society, your family name comes before your actual name because realistically, your status is determined by your family.
Right. And her family came from wealthy and she was kind of an aristocratic family, but not too much. They were still not considered one of the famous Chinese families from which like emperors were made.
Right.
So Wu Shihu was a timber merchant, which is where his money came from. He was also a decorated war hero, and then he became a provincial governor in the Tang dynasty. So this is the dynasty ruled by Emperor Taizong. Wu Zhao was the second daughter of her family, and there was like little pressure for her to be married and meek and cute and things like that.
Yeah, also, just to set some context, that's my job.
Mhm.
Most girls from noble or wealthy families at the time in Chinese society, they were taught to sort of be obedient and nice and
Mm.
gentle. In fact, Confucius, that Nisha mentioned earlier, his work very heavily influenced Chinese societal roles. And he was of the opinion that a woman's role was to just largely manage a household. And even the concepts of yin and yang, which we know, more recently, they're associated with Confucius, who defined yin to be soft, passive, tranquil, yielding, like a woman,
Mm.
and yang as sort of hard and assertive, dominating and active, like a man. So, like, women also really depended on men, for everything, like their fathers, their husbands, and their sons, because they owned land, they owned
Yeah.
property, sort of was consolidated with them, right?
Hmm.
Which is why not having a son in ancient Chinese culture was considered a curse on the family. If you had women, especially if if you were a wife and you didn't have a son, the presumption was that you would not be taken care of in later years of your life.
Huh. It's quite
Yeah.
similar to, I guess, a lot parts of India, right?
Yeah, I think one thing common among all civilizations is that we all learned how to fry chicken. Somehow.
Yes.
Find that bird and fry it. And the other thing is like women are worse than those chickens.
Yeah. Oh. Nice. So just remember that a lot of what we're saying now is very, very summarized.
Mhm.
I mean, we cannot get into Chinese history right now. It's way too long.
Yeah.
We're just explaining whatever is needed for this episode. It's just
Mhm.
like all heterogeneous cultures and societies, ancient China was a mosaic of practices and traditions. So do your own reading if you want to know more.
Yeah. Like get off your ass and read something.
Jeez, yeah.
You're on Instagram right now. Get off.
But a lot of these rules didn't really apply to Wu Zhao. Her father decided that she was to be educated. She was taught to read and write. She could read Chinese classics, poetry, and Confucian philosophy. She learned about Chinese society at the top and bottom levels and everything in between. She also learned about government, administration, trade, diplomacy, politics. And she learned all this by the age of 13.
Damn. At
Yeah.
30, I'm
Yeah.
here telling you about her, I guess. I don't know. Now, 13, by the way, like 13, 14, around that time, it's considered old enough that you are ready to be married off.
Hmm.
Or that you could become a junior consort for the Emperor of China.
Hmm.
Now, consorts, or Nishad used the word concubines before. We're not using that because it's a little degrading. We're going to stick with consorts.
Yeah.
Consorts in Asian China were not just passive wives. Many of them were, of course, but many of them also were very acutely aware of how they needed the emperor's favor and his, advisor's favor to
Hmm.
grow in rank. Because
Hmm.
even among the consorts, there were ranks of
Correct.
people. Like they would get different kinds of household duties.
Hmm.
And of course, the higher the rank, the more favored you were. If you had a child with the emperor, you would be, gifted that way.
Hmm.
And many consorts had different roles as well. Some were appreciated for their art and dance, some for their wit and their sharp tongues, some for their skills in bed,
Hmm.
some for their skills as administrators. And if the emperor favored you, you obviously received a better rank. So many consorts relied on particularly information and gossip to just gaslight or just straight up blackmail, like other consorts especially, into better positions as well. So
Hmm.
being a consort was not just like, oh, look at me rolling through the gardens, my fan.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. It was a pretty ruthless sort of uphill process for those that wanted that power.
Hmm.
And luckily, our love Wu excelled at it.
But she started out by impressing her emperor with conversation and singing and dancing. She also wrote poetry for the emperor.
Yeah.
It appears she was not very proficient in a sexual way, and that's the most that we will say about this because she is 13 or 14 years old at that time. I already have to wash my mouth with soap for saying this out loud.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Full shiver down my spine.
Horrible. In any case, Taizong made Wu his personal secretary and she was constantly accompanying him to court. She met his ministers, his counselors, dignitaries, administrators, and she learned a lot from the emperor on how to govern.
Nice.
The emperor also had a son whose name was Li Ji. Li was the third son of his first wife and had some claim to the throne.
I mean, yeah, like he would have a claim to the throne if his first two brothers died in a secret plane crash or something.
Yes, correct. But there were no planes at this time.
Oh,
But also it was not needed because the emperor just straight up banished his first son.
oh,
Like, father, we want to be king. No, get lost.
no.
And Li became the crown prince.
Hmm.
Li also fell in love with Wu.
What?
Now, this fellow was married and had many consorts. But there was something about Wu that just entranced him.
Stepmom, what are you doing here?
Oh, no. So Wu was about 20 years older than Li when she started having the affair, and everyone in court knew about it.
Cool. Let me actually butt in here for a minute.
Hmm.
At this time, a consort of the emperor was considered his property.
Right.
I mean, by that logic, all women of marriageable age in China were essentially just like one inky pinky ponky process away from becoming the emperor's property. Was that gross? Yes, it's pretty disgusting and it grosses us out to say it out loud. But it is what it was. So this meant that Li, when he was in the middle of his passionate affair with Wu, was actually breaking a pretty serious set of laws at the time because he was claiming the crown's property as his own. This, by the way, reminds me of my favorite movie. I know you've watched this because it is The Mummy.
I love the mummy.
Thank God. If you told me you hadn't watched a Brendan Fraser movie, I would have just left.
We've discussed this before. I've seen the mummy. Yeah.
Aw, that's awesome. So I'm thinking about when Anaxunamun has an affair with the priest Imhotep.
Oh, yeah.
And then the king comes walking and he's like, who touched you? And she just looks literally straight at Imhotep. And he comes and he's like, stab, stab, stab. Anyway, that's the entire movie. They come back, they're mummies, and then it's gone.
So
9
sad.
on 10, we'll watch again.
Yes. Done. But Wu and Li did it anyway, and they did it for love.
Gross.
And it was such an intense love. When Emperor Taizong died in 649 AD, Li Ji became the emperor at the age of 21. He called himself the Emperor Gaozong of Tang. And Wu was made his consort.
Oh, also, the rule at the time was when the emperor died, all his wives and consorts who did not have children would be sent to a monastery.
Right.
So their heads would be shaved and they would live the rest of their lives as nuns. This adds to the idea that, they are the emperor's property and that they were his property even in death and no other man was permitted to touch them, which is why they were basically banished from the city.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Wu and the other consorts were sent to the Ganye Buddhist temple. Well, the other consorts were sent there. Wu was called back literally minutes after she entered the monastery.
Yeah.
And she was called back to become the new Emperor Gaozong's primary consort.
Whoa, that is quite some elevation. There's also some accounts that she ran away from the monastery and went to Gaozong. And he was just like, oh, you again. Stepmom, you again.
I mean, you go get it, girl.
Yeah, it's fair. I get it.
Now remember, Gaozong was already married. His actual wife was Empress Wang.
Right.
And Wang hated Wu with a passion. Maybe she was threatened by Wu's education and demeanor. Maybe she was jealous of, the fact that the husband is spending so much time with her.
Right.
Maybe she was just pissed off that Wu gave her husband 3 children while Empress Wang herself had none.
Oh, that'll get you.
Yeah. In any case, Wang was on guard.
And she should have been because she was going to get her hands chopped off.
Do you mean her head?
No, I know what I said.
Whoa. On that note, do you want to take a quick break? And when we get back, what happened to her hands? And did Wu Zetian get to the throne?
Yes.
Ladies, I'm sure you will relate to it if I say that we are constantly busy with work, studies, cooking, and what not. And amidst all of this, we often forget an important element that needs our desperate attention: finance. So here we are, bringing to you SBI Life presents A Sip of Finance, a women-exclusive podcast where we will teach you how to manage personal finances in a simple and straightforward way with your host, Priyanka Acharya, a finance expert who's been in the industry for 14 plus years. And not just in English, but in 7 more languages. So tune
Welcome
in
back,
every
everyone.
Tuesday
And now
for
please
fresh
join us
episodes
for
on
the
the
Crime
IBM
Stuff.
Podcast Network
So
and
it's actually
all major
quite
podcast
honestly,
streaming
absolutely
platforms.
liberating
Yeah.
to talk about women that lived a long time ago. And the reason I feel that way is because unless she's like a deity or something, all the records that we have of these women are from actual peer-reviewed archaeological or historical information. These are papers. These are the Smithsonian writing articles and putting out videos and stuff, So And also, we have all this gossip and court chatter that was written in a really petty way. Like it's just so interesting to read that stuff. And they were carved into like papyrus or something, and they survived all these years. So it's this beautiful mix of fact and fiction in here. See, it's amazing because there's sources for everything, and also I can't get sued. Yeah, trifecta. I love that. But let's talk about Wu Zetian, because at this point she kind of just loses it, right? So Wu was pretty clear from the get-go that she wanted to be the primary love interest of the emperor, and she didn't like that Empress Wang was in her way. So in the year 654 AD, when Wu's young daughter tragically died, she blamed Empress Wang for her death. Now, it would usually be very stupid for a consort to be like, aha, my emperor's queen murdered my kid, because most people would not believe her.
Yeah.
But in this case, lucky for Wu, Empress Wang was not very well loved in court. For one, she hadn't had a baby yet. That's already a problem.
Right.
And the emperor did not have a direct male heir from her. The other thing was, rumors were going on at the time that the empress was a sorceress who practiced black magic. Practicing black magic in any way or form was something that could get you a death sentence at the time. Now, who started these rumors? It was Wu. And also, as unlucky as it was, Empress Wang was also the last person to have been seen holding the baby.
Oh no.
Yeah, the baby actually died of strangulation.
So it could have also been that because, old Chinese palaces were heated with coal and had no ventilation whatsoever. So it just could very easily just be carbon monoxide poisoning.
It's possible. Yeah. Also, she died within weeks of being born. There could have been a series of complications. Remember, there was no penicillin.
Yes.
And people just straight up put lead on their face. And they were like, my face is so smooth. It's because the top layers of your skin are peeling off. So the blame game against Empress Wang worked very, very well. And Empress Wang was arrested.
And then sentenced to prison. But that wasn't enough for Wu. She insisted that Empress Wang and her primary lady in waiting be tortured and then killed. I feel really sad for the primary lady in waiting. Like, what did she do?
She's actually also one of Emperor Gaozong's consorts. Yeah, that's what I heard. Doesn't make any difference. No. She's basically just eliminating anybody who's currently having sexual relations.
I mean, I get the logic.
Sure.
But she also insisted that their hands and feet be cut off from their bodies. And then she had the two of them placed in a giant vat of wine. So they just bled out slowly and died a very painful and prolonged death.
While their lungs filled with wine. What the hell?
Do you think she drank the wine later?
Bro.
But anyway, here's the kicker for all of this. There are actually multiple records that state that Wu may have killed her own daughter.
What?
Yes. So she may have seen the empress holding the baby and just decided to quickly act, or maybe she planned the whole thing out. In any case, the empress was no longer in the picture, and Wu only lost a daughter, not her precious son.
Oh no.
Yeah. So after the empress died, there was a job vacancy.
Yeah, hit it up on LinkedIn.
And so the emperor decided to marry Wu, and she became Empress Wu, the queen and royal consort of Emperor Gaozong of the Tang dynasty.
Nice.
Now, that's a long title, we know. But it wasn't really a definitive title. It wasn't, for example, Wu, the sole and prevalent empress of the giant, insanely massive, supremely wealthy Chinese empire, bow down before she slaps you and dunks you in a vat of wine. Which I feel like is something that Wu would have wanted.
How would you carve that into her tombstone?
She'll get a giant tombstone. What?
Oh, that's fair. She is the queen.
Yeah. But she played like the good wife empress for a long time. And she had 3 more sons with Gaozong and another daughter.
Okay.
And he was smitten with her. He hung out with her all the time, did whatever he could to keep her happy. And Wu, as the head of the imperial household, wielded immense power, especially among the rest of the women in court. But something interesting happened. A few years into her husband's rule, he started to get sick, like really, really sick.
Okay.
Again, it could be all the lead. But
yes.
It was speculated that he had high blood pressure.
Okay.
Which makes sense for a king. So a spell of illness would like put him in bed for days together. There were many that thought that he just wasn't a strong ruler and maybe Wu was influencing from behind the scenes. They also thought that Wu was not noble enough to be the empress.
Oh.
Yeah, so this is where the Chinese societal norms come into play. So her father was rich and influential, but he wasn't from one of those famous like Chinese noble families.
Oh. You mean like new versus old rich kind of nonsense?
Exactly. Yeah. But what the courtiers didn't know was they were right.
Oh, shit.
Wu was controlling the emperor from behind the scenes. Quite
Mhm.
literally. Apparently, she should sit behind a pearl screen at court
Oh.
and whispering to the emperor on how he could govern the state. Just be like, "Kus, kus, 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 kus." And the emperor was like, I only heard kus, 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 but he took it very seriously.
In 660 AD, Gaozong started to suffer from headaches and failing eyesight. So it's likely that he had had a series of strokes which really impaired him physically and mentally. And Wu decided, benevolent as she is, to unofficially take over governance duties. Now, some historians believe, by the way, that Wu was likely poisoning him. Yeah, because by this time, Wu had actually started doing something really naughty. So without her husband knowing, Wu was setting up a chain of spies across the country and the court. She would call it the secret police, and they would give her intelligence about the country.
Are you telling me she came up with the KGB before the KGB?
Yeah,
Nice.
she really did. And for a while, though, just before, the secret police could be fully set up, she sort of put up these copper mailboxes outside the palace where common people were invited to give her secrets of the state. And if she heard something about, somebody that she knew or like an official or a governor or something, she would take action against them. Whether it was true or not, she didn't really care about, how true it was. She was just like, let's get rid of them. It's fine.
The KGB does not ask questions.
It's exactly the KGB.
Yeah.
Whoa. Later, of course, she would set up the secret police, and they often told her when people were opposing her and stuff, right? So this helped her identify her enemies, and she secretly, or sometimes quite blatantly, had them assassinated. Now, some of these secret police officers were so cruel that they would take out days to torture the people they were assassinating before finally killing them. Some other officers, were kind of thugs, and they'd always lived a life of violence. So people who were, victims of the secret police did not face a happy final end. Many officials from court were also convicted for treason and put to death. And some of the families of these men were sent far away from court, stripped of their power and wealth, and forced to live off the generosity of the Empress for the rest of their years. And these acts of Wu really changed the nobility hierarchy overall of the Tang dynasty drastically. And she sort of put together her own team of ministers that sort of became yes men for her.
Yeah.
But, she's also not stupid. So while they were yes men, I'm sure she was also capable of governance separately, She sort of put them mostly in place so she would be protected.
Nice.
And she protected these men in return. How, you would protect a close confidant or something.
Right.
And that made it extremely appealing for people to join her side. Because if she hated you, she would end you and your loved ones. But if she liked you, she would take care of you and she'd help you rise politically and financially.
You know what? I don't know about you, but I feel like that sounds like a solid deal, dude.
I would take it. Dude,
Right?
I've thought about this before. I think we've discussed this before. If an alien invasion happened and our alien overlords came down to Earth and said, if you will take a knee for me, then I will keep you safe. And the rest of humanity is like, no, we'll fight you. I would just secretly be like, yeah, okay. I will take a knee. Just don't tell anybody. I'll become a spy.
Wow. Which knee, Raghavi? The one that we've both broken.
Oh, yeah. Nisha and I both have broken right knees. I would take that knee. I'm okay with it.
Yes.
Because I'm assuming the aliens have the technology to fix my goddamn knee. Hopefully, I'll get bionic legs. Come, Nisha, we'll
Let's do it.
become spies for these alien overlords and they'll give us bionic legs.
So into it.
Nice.
Okay, so back to Wu. We know where this is going now. The emperor is super sick. Wu has been putting spies everywhere. She's getting rid of her enemies, putting yes men in her place. Just taking things off her checklist one after the other.
Nice. Go get her.
What's the next step?
Oh, I know. Pick up a new hobby like painting or horse riding.
No, man. She's waiting for the emperor to die.
Oh.
But while she waited, she was facing some other further resistance. But this time it was from her own family.
Oh.
Her oldest son, Li Hong, died in 675 AD. Her second son, Li Jian, became the crown prince. But there was a lot of chatter in court that he was not actually Wu's son. The rumor was that he was actually one of the emperor's other consorts. Son and empress, Wu just kind of claimed him as her own.
Huh?
And the crown prince also really did not like Wu, and he felt like she was controlling his father too much. It's not wrong, but still.
Yeah.
So in 679 AD, when a high-ranking court official was murdered, Empress Wu just passed around the rumor that it was the crown prince that killed him.
Oh. She's great at this rumor stuff, huh?
It really is.
Hmm.
So after Wu just like pushed him a little bit, Emperor Gaozong banished the crown prince and stripped him of all royal privileges.
Ouch.
Let's move on to son number 3.
Yay.
Li Jie
Mhm.
then became the crown prince, and he was very much like his father. He loved Wu so much, and he would just listen to her with rapt attention and admiration. So controlling the crown prince was very easy, and Empress Wu ruled from the sidelines.
As always. But in 683 AD, the emperor died. And the crown prince ascended to the throne in 684 AD. Now, Empress Wu became the Empress Dowager, which meant the mother of the emperor. You know how I know this word? Because of Princess Diaries.
Me too.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the
That's
entire.
all.
There's no joke. It's just a random fact. But Li Jie had a very ambitious young wife. He is the crown prince, by the way, who is now the king. He's the emperor. He had a very ambitious young wife who did not like her mother-in-law.
Surprise, surprise.
Yes. I mean, I don't know. To which Wu said, "Shut up." So what did she do?
Oh my God, she killed her son.
No. She didn't kill her son. She instead just made him abdicate his throne.
Oh,
Just gaslighting, that's all.
wow.
So her fourth son, Li Dan, took over the throne instead. But also, okay, sure, she didn't kill her son maybe directly, but Li Jian didn't survive.
Oh no.
Yeah, sources say that Wu sort of gaslighted him so much during his reign, his very short reign, that he felt immense shame and pressure, and he decided to commit suicide. We learned earlier that he was very attached to his mum. So that's basically straight up parental abuse, right?
Yeah.
So she just got her son fired from his job and then nagged him so much that he killed himself. And the new emperor, Li Dan, did not take too long to also say peace. As in, he didn't die, thankfully.
Oh, thank God.
It was in 690 AD, Li Dan was forced to abdicate as well. He was just named the crown prince, no longer the king,
Okay.
which left another LinkedIn job vacancy. So Wu very benevolently decided to take on the thankless job of being the emperor of the whole of China.
Nice.
And she rebranded as well. For one, this is when she started calling herself Wu Zetian for the first time. This meant ruler of the heavens.
Nice.
She also stripped the Tang dynasty and she called it the Zhao dynasty. This is her given name back as a kid. She was also 65 years old when she finally ascended the throne for real, when she stopped doing the background stuff.
Yeah.
And sure, she ruled behind the scenes for a while, but now with, the name change, the dynasty change, the getting rid of all of the sons,
Yeah.
that really solidified her position as a real ruler.
And that was the bloody trail that led to Wu's ascension to power. But Raghavi, do you know what's not a bloody trail?
What?
The road that leads to the lovely podcast on the IVM Podcast Network. So let's take a break.
Nice.
And when we come back, was Wu really as bad as everyone says she is? Yes, she was. But was she also cool sometimes? Yes, she was.
Hey, duality.
See you guys in a bit.
Hello, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcasts Network. On The Habit Coach, Dr. Richa and Ashton talk about the ill effects of cigarettes, vapes, and hookahs. On Misconduct, Raghavi and Nisha introduce us to Sarlaben, the woman who led the Chipko movement. On Naan Curry, Sadaf and Archit talk about the tearjerker of all vegetables, onions. On Pulyabazi, Pranay and Saurabh analyze whether Indian states should engage in economic diplomacy. And on Ek Chuski Finance, Priyanka tells us all there is to know about KYC. We've got some exciting news for you. IVM Podcasts has just launched its merch and our first line is out now. Head to the IVM Podcasts website and click on the shop tab to check out our first collection of t-shirts. Do follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any platform you're listening on. And you can also check us out on YouTube. We're also doing a small listener survey to better understand how you respond to our shows and advertising on the network. We would really appreciate it if you could spare a few minutes
Welcome
to fill
back
it out.
after the break.
It helps
we are
us
talking
build
about
better shows
Emperor
for you.
Wu
And finally,
Zetian.
we would like
So
to thank
by
our
all
sponsors this
historical
week.
accounts that can be
SBI Life
trusted, Wu
Insurance,
was actually considered
Jupiter,
to be
a
a
digital
good
banking
queen.
app,
Oh.
Cap Gemini, get the future you want, Intel V Pro, built for business, and Intel, future banao wonderful with Intel-powered laptops.
Not initially, of course, because initially everyone was like, hey, who is this man? Why is she taking over? Then after some archaeological discoveries, they're like, oh, she's not that bad, dude. And like, I mean, people are pretty happy.
Nice.
So this was a time when like Chinese society was dominated by political and military aristocracy,
Mhm.
and government positions were based on family connections.
Right.
Wu herself came from a well-off family but did not have the tag of, the classic Chinese noble family.
Mm-hmm.
And her disdain for the traditional ideas of Chinese social hierarchy was pretty obvious,
Yeah.
because she rounded up military and government officials
Yeah.
with her secret police and just was like,
Nice.
in case, because this is a voice platform, I was basically miming my hand across my throat.
I can see you across the table.
Yes.
So, yeah, she's pretending.
That one.
Yes.
So the first step in her reign was to change the entire societal policies, which is when she decided to open up the civil services position in the government to the common masses.
Nice.
This was obviously met with fierce resistance for a time, for like 3 months.
Oh.
And during this period, many Chinese aristocrats mysteriously died.
Oh no! Why ever did that happen?
After which everyone was suddenly agreeing that, hey, this policy is amazing, fantastic, best, long live Emperor Wu.
Jolly, brilliant.
So, in fact, the idea of having entrance exam to be part of the civil services was a novel idea back then. And since then, it's just been replicated across the board in literally every country in the world.
That's true.
Yeah.
Aside from this, Wu was also pretty active in the agrarian circles. So she set up like a lot of infra for newer farming techniques in particular. Remember that she was pretty literature and arts oriented.
Correct.
So she was the kind of person who would be like, let's learn what the rest of the world is doing and try to make it work for us. She ordered that farming textbooks be distributed in local dialects for families and farmers to use. She also set up irrigation canals and granaries. In fact, in the years prior to Wu's reign, China was kind of going through a really rough drought that left many districts subject to famine. And her granaries actually helped reduce this burden over time, pushing Chinese farmers to work with each other and become self-sufficient. In fact, these policies would govern the rest of the 200 years of the Tang dynasty and sort of keep them pretty much in power. You can't do another 200 years unless your architecture and your infrastructure and your policies were so solid, right? And there's some historical evidence suggests that in times of flood or drought especially, people of the Sichuan province would pray at temples in the name of a celestial empress, referring to Wu, in fact, to bless them with a good yield, because that's how commonly she's associated with good agriculture. Even today, she's honored in the same province by an annual agricultural festival, especially on her birthday. So Wu also reduced taxes, by the way, on the poor. She taxed rich people instead, would Bernie something, I don't know. In the year 695 AD, which is apparently a year full of good moods for Wu, she decided to make the entire empire tax-free.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Also, Wu decided one day that she just wasn't happy with her people only having access to Chinese products. She was like, let's expand the Silk Road between China, Central Asia, and Europe. And the thing about the Silk Road was that, sure, there was free trade and commerce across various empires, but more importantly, towns that were on the Silk Road would have access to the wares from outside of the country.
Nice.
Which meant that peasants and common folk, that those people who lived along that Silk Road route, they would all be able to buy and use all of these wares.
Nice.
So among some of the research that we did, one such example was this crown that was unearthed that was still worn on the head of a decomposed corpse. So the crown had various types of metals and gemstones, of which many of it was native to Iran, India, and other Western countries.
Oh.
And here's the best part. The woman who was wearing it, she was just a distant peasant cousin of a man who held an administrative position in Wu's government, came from some farmer family. Basically, it meant that this woman from a small village had access to some of the finest materials in far-off lands, which I think is impressive.
It is very impressive. It's exceptionally cool, actually.
It is.
And also, just to add to this, what are the last achievements of Wu? is her contribution to art, literature, and architecture.
Hmm.
And by that, I mean, she didn't do anything herself, but she was a patron of the arts, which is what rich people should be doing. Support the artists. Don't make NFTs out of everything. Which basically means that she threw money at her artists and scholars and architects. And she trusted them to build and create fantastic things that would keep her legacy alive. To make her power unquestionable, she planned the expansion of the imperial palace on a scale that was unheard of at that time. So the imperial palace boasted giant gated entrances that gave damning imperial palace a sense of awe in terms of sheer size and grandeur. And once the expansion was completed, archaeologists estimate that the palace itself was 3 times the size of the city of Pompeii and 22 times the size of the Acropolis of Athens.
Damn.
I know. And the historical accounts of travelers from this time also show that whenever visitors came to see the palace, especially even from just far away, their jaws dropped as they approached it because it was just so imposing and so grand. It was supposed to make you feel small in comparison to the crown.
Nice. Nice. And on that high note, let's talk about all of the terrible things. So Wu has received a lot of flack as well.
Right.
She patronized a lot of Buddhist temples and set up massive architectural structures in her own image.
Oh, nice.
And as per her taste. So this was seen as a kind of narcissistic move. She also really pushed out the existing aristocracy, which was kind of politically stupid. And obviously many didn't support her very violent ways.
Right.
But you know what sucks?
What sucks, Nisha?
Literally all men in power do this.
Yep.
Right? They consolidate their power, their empires through bloodshed, genocide, looting, raping, pillaging, military campaigning.
Yep.
Just can you name one emperor who's just like sweetly went and asked for something and got it?
Akbar, maybe from the Mughal Empire. He just married a bunch of Rajput princesses that didn't have a ring on their fingers.
Yeah, but it's not like he asked nicely. Behind him was a giant Mughal army that could just like take over any Rajput fort and just like sweat out the occupants over many months. It's just
That's fair.
cool, we just stand here and wait for you to die inside. So like it's not really Akbar asking politely. It's more like, hey, give girl or I take it. Your choice.
Wow. I feel like I have a choice there. This reminds me of there's this movie that I watched recently. I don't know why I watched it so late. It's called The Talented Mr. Ripley. It's got Matt Damon in it and Gwyneth Paltrow's in it. A very attractive Jude Law is in it. But there's basically this scene where I think a few men are like ha ha hoo hoo fighting in like a cute way. But Gwyneth Paltrow says, why is it that when men like play fight, they fight in a way that looks like they're going to kill each other? I'm paraphrasing. But basically, she talks about how men fight in a way that looks like they are just violent. And I found that very interesting because even when, you know, like, especially if you're like born to become an emperor, you are essentially told, listen, you need to conquer, okay? You need to take stuff, you need to build stuff, you need to make stuff your own, expand your borders, you know, like expansion was a really big deal.
Yeah.
In fact, many emperors, especially, I mean, kings of Western Europe and stuff like that, all look towards war as a way to make people happier. Like, look at me, look at my power.
Yeah.
God has created me, I'm better than you, you know?
True.
So with that in mind, why didn't Wu get that same treatment? Yeah. She did exactly what these dudes did.
Yes.
That's really it. In fact, many rulers of the past have actively participated in casual genocide because that cemented their position. She just killed a bunch of aristocrats. Not that it's accepted.
No.
But she, you know, she did exactly the same thing.
It was accepted of everyone else. Why not her?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's either nobody does it or everybody does it.
Yes.
Correct.
Actually, you know, the fun thing, I mean, something that you mentioned before about the civil services exam. So I had a lovely opportunity very long time ago to go to Beijing. And there was a tour guide who kind of was taking us through like various passages in Beijing Palace. And he was talking about how like at that time in China, if you were a boy, like you were born a boy, you could, the only job for you is to study properly and write the civil services exam and then like be in the palace and then your life is set.
Nice.
So, I mean, all boys were like, you know, trained to do only that. But he never mentioned that it was Wu who came up with that.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
And on the flip side, he said if you were a girl, you were like told, oh, you should be beautiful, you should be like this, dress like that, learn this art, whatever, because you must be a consort in the palace. And then your life is set. So the end goal is end up in the palace somehow.
Yeah,
Right?
I get
Because
it.
that's
yeah.
the best place to be. And also he mentioned that a lot of girls who didn't want to go down the consort path
Mhm.
would actively like cut themselves in the hand or like burn certain like small portions of their skin or whatever.
Oh.
So that when the palace, I don't know, checkers, when they come to do inky pinky ponky, they look at her and be like, hey, what is this dirty blemish? Please, we don't want.
Oh.
And the girl's like, hey, this was the plan.
That is really, really smart.
Yeah.
Man, imagine if Wu had done something like that.
But she wanted to be in the palace. So I would think that she like protected herself like nobody's business.
I don't actually necessarily know if as a 13-year-old she wanted to be in the palace.
Well, what do you know as a 13-year-old?
yeah, as in maybe if you're told,
Yeah.
you must be in the palace.
Right.
Maybe she made it a thing. But then
Yeah.
realistically, if she was given choice,
Hmm.
but she still retained her ability to govern and rule, maybe she could have done so with just a smaller little group of people.
I feel like given her circumstances, given her like situation,
Mhm.
she was like, you know what, fine. If I have to do this, I'm going to be the best at this.
Nice.
Which is something I appreciate.
Aha, moral of the whole podcast. Love it. Nothing pisses us off more than a woman who is incompetent at crime also.
Correct.
Pisses me off.
Yes.
Now, who's it in? Of course, it's terrible to say this. She was eventually deposed from her throne. This was on 21st February 705 AD.
Oh no, it was a few days after her birthday.
Oh,
Her birthday 17th Feb, no?
yeah. Also, she was 81.
Huh.
Which, by the way, is a really big deal for a
Yeah.
time when there was no penicillin.
That's true.
Yeah, and I keep saying this, so penicillin is important, guys. Antibiotics are so important for us. But yeah, back at a time when there was no modern medicine and people stuck leeches on you
Yeah.
to get rid of your period or whatever, I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, like that's the time when she lived this old. And she also, most likely, had lovers on the side because she's still a woman. So apparently she was with these two guys who were brothers. They were called the Zhang brothers. They may have been her lovers. They may have just been her confidants. We're not very sure about that.
Mhm.
But basically, they were being groomed by her to become her successor. And people were like, listen, you have an actual crown prince. Li Jiang is still around, you know. You made him emperor for a while and then kicked him off for a little while. And now you're like, nothing, goodbye, which is kind of cruel.
Yeah.
So her advisors were like, listen, this lady was cool all this while, but now she's getting a little out of her depth. And they deposed her in February. Now, of course, they did love her. She was a great queen.
Yeah.
She wasn't treated badly in the end of her days. She was allowed to still just live in another slightly bigger, massive palace, just not the king's, the emperor's palace, right? Li Zhong became the next emperor, and unfortunately, the Zhao name for the dynasty was given up. It had a great 15 years, but it was given up, and the Tang name was picked up instead. Unfortunately, when we look at the Tang dynasty, the Zhao aspect of it is considered to be a blip in the larger thing. But what they don't realize is the next 200 years, the Tang dynasty flourished primarily because of the diplomacy sort of positions that Wu built for herself, as well as everything she did in the country for the people and for the aristocrats. Eventually, after a short period of illness, Wu passed away on 16 December 705 AD. This is interesting. Her body was interred at the Qianling Mausoleum right next to her husband, the former Emperor Gaozong. And if you look at the landscape from the mausoleum, there are these things, these two hills, that are shaped perfectly like a woman's breasts. And they're actually called nipple hills. Legend has it that mausoleum for the emperor was intentionally built there because the perfectly even and ample shape of those mountains reminded him of the empress's chesticles. Yeah. That's a legend. I have no idea if that's true. But I read it and I was like, podcast.
If anyone is going to China, please check and tell us. I think my feelings for Emperor Wu Stan can be neatly summarized in this one word.
Woohoo! How do we never use that joke? You know what else we haven't done? We haven't made one Game of Thrones joke.
I know.
Yeah, this entire life, her entire life was Game of Thrones.
It really is.
Yeah. She was the Cersei of her times.
She really was.
including the stepmom.
Oh God.
Okay, cool. Song time.
Emperor Wu Zetian was as ruthless as any man. I'll tell you something really fun. Slept with the king and then his son. Emperor Wu Zetian hatched many an evil plan. Child murder would be fine while drowning enemies in some wine. Emperor Wu Zetian many years did her reign span. Foreign research say they just got to know, but Chinese records got it years ago. Emperor Wu Zetian was as ruthless as any man. We guess she looked pretty bomb, 'cause oh my God, what you doing, stepmom?
Well. Woohoo indeed. That was beautiful. And
Thank
that
you.
also brings us to the end of our episode. We're available on every platform that you could find us on. Of course, on the IVM Podcast Network's website, an app, as well as any platform that you use. Go listen to our other episodes as well. If you're interested in other non-Indian women, we've covered Jeanne de Valois last season. She was a con woman
Yes.
from France and she sucked. Go listen to her.
Yeah, and you can also leave us reviews, because let us know what you think, right? You can leave us review on Apple Podcasts, you can leave stars on Spotify, you can do the little heart thing on Google Podcasts. Just find
Yeah.
a way to review us, guys.
Yeah,
Tell
please
us that you
do.
love us.
We know you do. Also, we have a survey for whether you want merchandise or not. Spoke about it in the last few episodes. What we're trying to do is sort of understand if you would like to purchase any of our merchandise. And the link is in the description. I love saying that. It's like I'm a YouTuber. Links in the description, guys. Go check it out. Please leave us what you think about how you want to purchase our merchandise and what you'd be interested in. And we'll try to put something together for you if there's enough interest.
We also feel like you listen to us, but you're not following us on Instagram. So please, how dare you? Just go Misconduct Pod. We're always talking about it. Go follow us,
Yeah.
guys. Please.
We have great reels up there. Reels that we put a lot of effort into. A couple of weeks ago, I spent several hours walking around the house pretending to be Gangubai Kathiawadi. I had a great time till, of course, the sari got too stressful to handle and I tripped in it. But we also post other true crime content, updates in the podcast and stuff as well. So please go follow us.
And we will see you on the next episode of Misconduct.
There's a quick survey to fill out on ivmpodcast.com/survey. It lets us know a little bit more about who's listening to us. And you know what? We're going to do a few prizes. So, we'll do a random drawing of maybe 10 people and we'll send you all some swag. Remember, that's ivmpodcast.com/survey where you can fill out the survey.
Are you looking for finance products and services that can enhance your personal finance experience? Are you looking for a space to talk about your financial product or service? And are you looking for a crisp talk show where the conversation is all about money? Well, your search ends here. Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta and I'm host of the Paisa Vaisa podcast, and I invite you for the conversation about your personal finance on each Monday on the IVM Podcast app or the website or on any podcast streaming platforms. See you folks.